my life's work, which is helping people to understand that they can start having conversations around money and earning money in a way that they never dreamed of, and knock out all the limiting beliefs and all the things that have gotten in their way around their relationship to money and start actually owning it. So most people don't realize that they can proactively ask for exit packages. And it is the area and the space that I want more people in this world to know about, because people stay in toxic environments way too long. And it's time that we stop doing that. So start negotiating, advocating for yourself. That is what I want people to land with today.
Welcome to the Great Life Experiment podcast. I'm your host, Monique Schaefer, and together we'll grapple with our messy, beautiful, and ever-changing personal and professional lives and the business world around us. I deeply believe there is no one right way to do this thing called life. Let's experiment together. As a quick reminder, friends, please note that this podcast is an independent production, and the information presented here and views expressed here reflect my personal opinion and do not reflect the views or positions of any organization or company that I'm affiliated with. Enjoy the episode. Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's episode of the Great Life Experiment podcast. As always, I'm your host, Monique Schaefer, and our guest today has spent decades in the rooms where decisions about your career were actually made. She was the CHRO. She built the compensation structures. She was the person who approved or denied exit packages. And then at 51, she flipped the script, went on her own, and now is on our side, sitting on the other side of the table. So Keri-Lynne Shaw, we are going to refer to you KL. KL Shaw is the founder of The Salary Bump. And she started it after watching so many talented people, brilliant, accomplished, capable, maybe it sounds like you, but leaving money on the table, titles, opportunities, or not even knowing what was possible for them in their career, whether they were negotiating going into a new role or after spending a lot of time at a company, how to exit, whether voluntary or involuntary exits. And a lot of it was because nobody had told them or they didn't have models in their lives. And since we are doing a series right now on the podcast about navigating career changes, I thought not only the entry, the exits, what you create after you leave, this would be a perfect conversation because she has been on the other side of the table and now she's on ours. So welcome, KL.
I love that. Thank you.
So before we dive into what you do now, you are so passionate about working with people and making sure they understand the possibilities that are in front of them, particularly around their money. Was there a moment either in your own career where you felt like, man, I really left something on the table?
There was so many moments, but one really big one. It was during the pandemic. And I had accepted a role maybe 10 months before the pandemic. Thought it was a good offer. It was a CHRO. It was a great role, great company. I was happy with the structure of my offer until I did my equity audit, which is the first thing I do when I come in to take over an organization is that I need to make sure we don't have any inequities. So I do an analysis and I listed the board, so all the C-suite executives, all the way down to vice president, and sorted it in descending order with their salaries, and my name was at the bottom of the list. And I was pissed at myself mostly. I was really pissed at myself because I obviously didn't negotiate enough. And of course, I presented it to my CEO. And one of the reasons I was doing this exercise was also because we were building some equity structures. So he saw my name at the bottom of the list. He's like, that's not okay. And I said clearly, and he goes, Kale, I did not do an analysis before I offered you this job of where you fell against the other executives. My bad. That's on me. We'll get it. We'll fix it. said, I'm not worried. We'll fix it. I'm certain we'll fix it. So this was within a couple of weeks. So, there was part of me where it's like, well, you'll see pretty quickly that I'm good and he'll, automatically want to fix it. Fast forward 7 months later, the pandemic hit and there was no conversation about an equity program because everything I was building towards wasn't going to come to fruition because we were in the fashion space. So fashion suffered badly and it was, the company ended up going bankrupt. That's the fast forward. But prior to that, anybody who went through the pandemic who was at a high level knows how HR was absolutely catapulted. If you were already not at the table, you suddenly had a seat at the table. I already had a seat at the table, but it was me and the CEO, CFO, me, CEO, CFO, and communications. Like we were in lockstep. Sales guys, all the other guys were sitting there. They had no product to sell. They had nothing to do. Everything was stuck. Like it was, all of our stuff was produced in China, Vietnam. Like, so we weren't getting. It was terrible. But they were, sitting there having fun, and I was even more furious because I now knew how badly my salary was and how much they needed me. So I put together a process to talk to my boss that took the emotion out of it. It was actually a communication wheel from London Business School that I had. And I structured how I wanted to have this conversation with him. And I got 2 sentences out and he doubled my salary on the spot. At that time, then I was making 150,000 more than the CFO, which never happens in my role. So if you rank all the C-suite leaders, CHRO is usually near the bottom, not usually the paid the highest. So I almost fell out of my chair. And again, this was not like the perfect timing for this conversation, but I was just so frustrated. I had to have this conversation. So it was at that moment, sorry for the long story, that moment where I said, wow, all I had to do was ask. But I was so at a frustration level that I shouldn't have let it get to that point. I should have negotiated harder when lots of mistakes that I made. Meanwhile, there were a bunch of other times in my career where I didn't negotiate. And it was from that moment that I never left another dime on the table since then. And you mentioned leaving and then starting this company. I never knew I was going to launch this company. I never knew that I had an entrepreneur. I knew it was an entrepreneur mindset wise, but I had no idea that I was going to do this. I just knew that I had something that the world needed. And that is how to show up, how to advocate for yourself. And I had all of this insider knowledge from an HR perspective because I watched all these leaders do it really well. And the ones that did it really badly, right? Like I took notes on the ones that did it really well and I put that in my toolkit to be able to then use for myself. And now I'm bringing it to the world. So, yeah. And then I took that moment and I looked back at all the years of money I left on the table. Actually, statistically, we were leaving between $1 million and $1.5 million on the table by not negotiating. And that is
Wow.
real. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm now helping people not make those mistakes that I did. And many of
Yeah.
us did, unfortunately. That's why we have a gender and racial pay gap. So
Yeah. And bringing up that statistic, I mean, you had a very unique moment because you could see from a transparency standpoint how your salary ranked against other people's. And you were an executive, right? Many people listening may be an executive, but they might be a manager, they might be a director, they might be a VP, they could be, a high performing individual contributor. So not just from executives, but how often do you see across the spectrum of titles and job descriptions that people are leaving real money on the table and they didn't even have an idea it was there because maybe they think it's only for executives?
everywhere, every day. I don't know how many jobs, I didn't negotiate, I didn't know I could. And if I did know I could, I didn't know how. And if I did know how, I was too afraid to ask because I was afraid they would think I want the money more than the job. That is not unique to me. So every single person is leaving money on the table, no question about it. And you mentioned transparency. You don't need to have transparency to be able to have this conversation, though, right? So if you are a director and you are looking to develop and grow, and you're having conversations with your leader about your career path and what's next for you, and you are not asking where your salary fits on the range and where you are placed compared to other directors in the role, that's a miss. Your manager should know it. So anybody that has a manager has to know it, because at end of year, they do merit increases and they do budget for bonus. They have to rank their people in the column, and they sort it, and they know what the other directors on their team are making. And then they can go to HR and say, listen, how does my team fit? Give me the whole range. I want to see where my team fits on that range. And you can then be able to figure out, am I on the low, am I mid, or am I high? If I'm high, all right, so I guess that means I'm VP next. If I'm low, I've been a director for how many years now? Talk to me about someone who's at the high level of that range, and how are they performing? What are they doing that I'm not?
Mhm.
Start asking questions like this, and you're planting then seeds, and then the ball is in your boss's court to be able to then start fighting for you to get more and open these conversations with HR, because they're probably conversations that they've never asked HR either. They know their little bucket of their 5 to 7 direct reports, but they all make, and they don't have these wider compensation discussions. So they have
Yeah.
to lead.
What I love about that example is I think many of us had heard, you should go negotiate when you're first taking a job, right? That initial job offer. And I think more and more people are, considering flexing that muscle, might have all sorts of hangups around the word negotiation. But I've experienced a lot of people have the belief, and I've run into it myself, that sometimes the longer you are at a company and you are within the normal talent cycle, the normal rhythm in which an organization operates, because for people that don't know, there is a talent cycle and a normal cadence of promotions and reviews and all of that happens at least at larger companies. But a feeling that it's almost harder to negotiate once you're at a company, and almost as if the longer you are there, that if you didn't negotiate earlier in the cycle, the compounding effect of that. So can you speak to, is there truth to it can be harder sometimes to negotiate bigger pops or catch up if you were undervalued before, the longer you stay at a company? Is there truth to that? And what do you say to that person that's been at a company for, 3 to 4 years?
You will get the biggest bang for your buck when you negotiate coming into a new organization. Full stop. That does not mean that you can't negotiate more once you're inside the organization, but you need to make sure you're high performing. You need to make sure you're visible, you're seen, and that the organization knows that they don't want to be without you. So I don't want to say that it's harder, but you have more leverage when you come into an organization. And beyond that, I think what people don't realize is that we're not just talking about salary. We're talking equity. We're talking bonus. We're talking maternity leave, paternity leave. We're talking healthcare. I've gotten people full healthcare rides instead of having to pay even a dime out of pocket. I want all my healthcare covered. If you can't, this is the max you can do on salary. Well, let's talk about how we close that gap. Right? So you're not getting big fat equity tranches midway through your career in your year 3 or 4, unless you do something super exceptional. But when you sign on and you're closing the gap, you can get a 50, 100. I've got people hundreds of thousands of equity tranches, load up my equity, or pull my vesting ahead. So in the early stage, you definitely have a better chance. But I just want to make sure people understand that we're not just talking about salary. And sadly, the first question you get asked is, what are your salary expectations? It's like, no, let's talk total comp. Tell me about your comp philosophy. Tell me about your structure. What do you pay for? What do you cover? A gym membership? Wow. Thank you. That costs me $250 at lifetime. $500 a year. That's a nice perk because that's an after-tax thing, right? So there are a list of 20 items that you can negotiate, even inside personal development. They don't pay for your MBA, but you found a program. I'll just give an example. One of my clients is a CFO, head of finance. And I found this program at Wharton that has CFO. It was a CFO program. There's a CRO one at Wharton. There's a whole bunch of them. And I sent it to her. It's online. I was like, this is interesting because she's just stepping into this head of role. And we got her company to pay for it. 20 grand. Perfect. Done. And she could take that with her if she ever leaves that company. You don't know, right? So what a beautiful opportunity for them to invest in her and for her to continue to grow her skills because that mattered to her. So we all care about different things, but all of those things are on the table.
That's a great reminder that when you look at kind of total compensation, and once again, every company is on a different end of the spectrum. Maybe you're at a startup and it's completely wild. There's no structure, or you're at a very large publicly traded company, lots of employees. There's a lot more structure around the process, but that it can be your salary and your equity, your bonus. But what I heard you also saying is, growing your skill and having those learning opportunities as well. And that is an investment in something to negotiate. And maybe sometimes people forget that there's a dollar value attached to that, and that can be actually a really good part of the negotiation because you're growing, continuing to add more value, but they're paying for it as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely. Same with, I mean, that's a great one, but cars, insurance, gas, chief memberships. I mean, the list goes on. So it's really what you care about. But at the end of the day, don't sleep on the base salary and the bonus and the cash components because sometimes also equity, people will say, yeah, but my equity is so good. Well, that's a unicorn. That's a shiny object. And how many of us actually ever even get to see that equity? Right? It's a 5-year vesting. You have to stay 5 years. Like it's not all that it's the shiny object it looks to be when you first hear it. And a lot of younger companies, startups, they're using that as leverage. You still need to pay your mortgage and you want to make sure you're protected from a cash perspective as well.
For people that are listening and they're like, yes, I agree that I need to negotiate for a job offer. Okay, I hear you that maybe I have a little more leverage than I thought I did within the role. A lot of people still might be feeling, I'm still not sure how to get started. I might feel uncertain. I might have doubt. What are the top pitfalls or pieces of advice that you find just over and over again you are giving to people in that phase?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about solutions versus pitfalls because there are a few things that people need to start doing right now. And this is not unique to whoever individual is listening, it's everyone. Less than 40% of people negotiate, less than 30% of women, and it's in the 20s for people of color. It is a very low number of people who are negotiating. And I mentioned earlier the three things and reasons why they don't. They don't know they can, they don't know how, and they have to get over themselves. They have to get over their fears and their limiting beliefs around money. So I'm here to tell you, you can. So let's take that off the table, that people should be negotiating. I didn't know that for probably 10 years, by the way. In my early 20s, zero clue that I was supposed to negotiate. Let's talk about the how for a minute, because I'm also the kind of person that focuses on what can you control? And all that you can control is, did I do my homework? Did I prepare for this conversation? Did I do the work? So you don't know what that final outcome is going to be. You don't know if they're going to say yes or no or throw you out. Very unlikely they're going to throw you out. But what you can control is, what is the market paying? Do the market research on the role. What are you currently at? Talk to people in your network about what that level of role that you are interviewing for or getting promoted to is paid in their industries, in their company. Start having conversations around money. There are tools out there everywhere where you can find this data and feed it to ask it for ranges, not pure numbers, and where they got the data. So there's lots of stats out there. There's lots of surveys and reports. Get grounded to the data and get grounded to what is the whole package could look like. Once you have the data, you're coming in with facts. Facts are very different than emotion, which is, I want to make more money. I have a baby on the way. No one cares about that. They care that you're having a baby, but they don't really care. If you ground yourself to facts, it's an easier conversation to have. Well, I actually did some homework about the market research. When I was doing my market research and the ranges between this and this, talk to me about how you came up with your range. You can ask questions around that, and then practice this conversation and on your Zoom, record yourself. As much as you're going to hate it, record yourself having the conversation. Record yourself and be prepared to answer in the very first interview, what are your salary expectations? I'm going to give you a little hint. The answer is you don't answer that question. Your answer is, talk to me about, well, first of all, I noticed you had a range posted. Is that accurate? And talk to me about the comp philosophy inside the organization. We haven't even talked about the role yet. How can we be talking about the compensation role and where I fall in that? We haven't even passed go. So it's the wrong time to be asking that question. And I wish recruiters and leaders would stop asking it up front. And I wish they would also do their homework before they post the role and before they post a range, because a lot of the times it's not an accurate range. So be prepared to answer that question. And then when it comes down to the final offer, one question I love to ask, peppered throughout the interview, is, this was the range that you suggested for the role. It's between 100 and 180. Talk to me about what a person at the high end of that role, or high end of that range, looks like. If you ask that question in the early part of the conversation, you are getting intel on how to answer questions to that ideal candidate beautifully. So regardless of any of it, you should be trying to figure out a way to get to the mid to high end of that range. And a lot of people don't, because they doubt their experience, they doubt their skills, they don't tick every single box on that job description, skill experience list, which women are notorious for. But I don't tick every box, so there's no way I could be at the high end. Yeah, hell yeah, you can. So positioning yourself and finding out how they would look at someone at the high end, and find out also about the person who was in the role before. Talk to me about how this compares to other directors at this level inside the organization. Like, you can ask questions around it. So be prepared, do your homework, and be prepared to make two biggest pieces of advice.
I love that. I love that. So let's fast forward in someone's career. And I'm seeing this a lot right now in the tech space, in my network. You have a lot of people that have been very high performers. So we're not talking about people that, just were kind of coasting, really high performers in their company. They were on particular career trajectories, their place in the market. And because the markets and industries are being completely disrupted, organizations are flattening, massive strategic changes are happening. So the theme is, so much change is happening that it has fundamentally altered people's roles, companies that they work for, in the organizations. And I'm seeing more people looking around and looking out and being like, I don't like where I am anymore. I thought I was in a place where I wanted to be. I thought I was doing good work. I thought I had a path, and I don't anymore. And I hear this over and over again of how people are feeling frustrated. They're feeling stuck. And I'm seeing more and more people, men and women alike, that are quitting, taking year-long sabbaticals, paid or, not paid, or doing quote unquote early retirement, whether they're actually early retiring, but that's their way of exiting. And so I'm seeing a lot of people exiting the workforce, and they're just walking away because they feel stuck and they don't like seeing what's around them. And that reaction, for those people that are just listening and not watching us on YouTube, KL definitely did the, biting of the knuckles of like, oh, I want
Please
you.
don't do that. Yeah,
Yes. So
please
let's
don't.
speak to those people right now,
Yeah.
because this is a trend that I'm seeing that is, I haven't heard talked about anywhere. What do you say to high performers that now look around and realize, I don't want to be at this company and I need to leave? Is their only option just to walk away, or what can they do instead?
Well, 95% of people that meet me say, I've never met anyone that does what you do. And where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 6 months ago? Where were you 10 years ago? Because people don't know that they can proactively exit with a package. So I did a couple of videos in my early stage of business about quiet quitting and why that's a terrible idea. And instead, you should ask for a package. Quiet quitting was a big thing 3 years ago. And when you know you are checked out, when you know whether you're high performing or not, doesn't matter what your level is, when you know that this is no longer a fit for you, if you stay, it affects your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, it affects your relationships, it affects everything. And people are feeling this and seeing it, yet not brave enough to walk away. And the reason they're not brave enough to walk away is, first of all, they don't know that they can ask for a package. And the finances and the financial runway is really scary. So I was always taught, I don't know about you, don't leave your job unless you have another one in the wings, unless you have
Hmm.
another job lined up. I would also say I don't know how true that is. I mean, you can do whatever makes you happy, but you have to have a runway. You have to have a financial runway, and that's got to be 12 months. In this market, it has to be 12 months to cover your bases because you don't know if you're going to get fired tomorrow or you're going to want to leave on your own. You do not want to be in a situation where you are beholden to the company because you don't have the financial means to be able to feed your family. So, highly recommend if you don't have a runway, get that as soon as possible. But proactively asking for an exit package is 70% of my revenue and is just such a significant part of my business because no one knows it's possible. I help you craft the story so you can walk in with the right verbiage to kind of make it their idea, to be able to put the ball in their court. You know if the company is downsizing, you know if they're restructuring, you know if the finances are not good, you know if your job isn't needed anymore, you know if you're on a PIP and your boss doesn't like your face, you know when a new leader comes in, wants to replace their team with all their besties, the people they trust. You smell it, you feel it, you know when it's coming, and you have far more negotiating power when you do it from the driver's seat than waiting to be part of a bigger reduction in force. It's called a RIF. If you are part of a bigger reduction in force, everyone has to be treated the same. And the company then doesn't have the play to be able to create and craft a package for you is really special. So I talk about this a lot. I talk about it at events. I did it once at an event and the woman came up to me after and said, yeah, I'm thinking of retiring, but I don't know what I'm going to do next, but probably going to consult and, do this and that. I said, well, that's not retirement. So let's talk about it. What's going on? And fast forward 2 months later, we got $2.3 million for her. And she was just going to retire. And I get a text message from her once a month. How amazing life is. Every person that I'm able to help proactively exit sends me a message at month 2-ish, if they're not already working with me to help them transition, and says, I had no idea how bad it was until I got out. And I had no idea how much I needed to recover and how much I needed this time until I was out. One woman actually said to me recently, I can actually taste food again. And then she said, I went to visit my parents and my mom and dad said, there's our girl. She's back. Like that just, wow.
Yeah.
Like you don't realize the toll sometimes that it's taking on you. I just got a call from a woman today. They put her on a PIP with absolutely no backup, with no reasoning, with no what success metrics look like. She's pregnant. She's like already having issues with the baby. And, it's like, come on, people, so like, let's get her out of there. let's get her a package and get her out of there so she can go move on with her life and go find that opportunity that's going to really light her fire.
I know so many people right now, they're scrolling down, they're looking for your link to book with you, or they're sending it to someone that they know in their network. Besides doing that step and reaching out to you, is there any self-reflection, homework, kind of first questions before people reach out to you when they first even become aware that they're in this spot of like, maybe I need help, maybe I'm ready to exit on my own, or I think a riff is coming, or I was just riffed. Is there anything that people can do tonight or tomorrow for themselves to start reflecting on this, even if they're not in a position yet to go talk
Yeah.
to HR?
So, um, get on my calendar. Number one, if you have any inkling, any indication, any feeling that it's just something is off, you know it, trust yourself. So I think the biggest part is trusting yourself. And then the second thing I would say is run your numbers. You have to run your numbers before you and I sit down and figure out if leaving is even a possibility. You need to know what your financial runway looks like. Do I have to dip into 401ks? Do I have to dip into savings? What do I need to survive if it's going to take me 12 months to find another job? 6 months, 12 months. Depending on your level, it's taking longer. And, even what were easier jobs to get in the past are taking longer. So that financial runway study would be the most important work. And then trust yourself. You know when you know.
Maybe you can clarify for the audience, because you had said something of having an example of somebody who was thinking about retiring and so doing a proactive, more of a planned exit. Then you have reorganizations that happen that are more limited scope. And then you have RIFs, which are percentages just across the whole organizations. Do you see the types of packages that you negotiate being different between those three? Or, the reorg and the RIF, those are pretty similar. It's the proactive one that's very different. Because you hear
Proactive is
about those three.
Yeah. Again, the ones that are part of a bigger organization, you have limited power. And if you know it's coming, you smell it, like, let's just do it proactively because we'll have more levers to pull. So even with RIFs or reorganizations or whatever you want to call them, or you're fired because they don't like your face, your boss wants somebody new in the role, you can add on things that are probably not in the RIF. Like, for example, depending on your level, they might give you outplacement support. They're pretty standard programs with standard companies that work with all of them. Not necessarily whether they're the most effective or not. Ask for cash instead, and you get to do whatever you want with that cash. You can go hire yourself a transition expert, or somebody on your own. You get to then choose, or use that to update your resume or whatever you want to do. There are so many more levers that you can pull on the proactive side. Accelerated vesting. Your circumstances are unique to you, and we maximize every single lever that we can. The $2.3 million one, we got 3 years of severance, 3 years of bonus, 3 years of equity. We got career transition coaching, and we got lifetime healthcare benefits.
You transformed that person's life. Like, oh my goodness, what a powerful story.
Yeah. And that's not unique. There's lots in the multi-millions, and it's not as complicated as people think. I do the prep work. I walk you through the whole script. We practice it. You walk in and have the conversation. It's usually a 10-minute conversation. It's usually not that long. And then conversation starts, right? And we know in our pocket what we would expect based on the number of years of service, based on our level. VP and above, I wouldn't accept anything less than 12 months minimum. That's how long it's taken to find a job for a VP and above. For C-suite, 18 to 24. And then I will say this, when you are negotiating a new package, you should also be negotiating severance as part of your package. In this market, you absolutely need protection. If they decide to fire you after 6 months or after a year, or it's 18 months, new leader comes in and you're not in anymore, you have protection. Think about it this way too. Think about being relocated. If you don't have severance and that they're going to pay to move you back to your home base, what are you thinking? Like that is like, these are critical elements that most people also don't think about. So, yeah, they're definitely different. Not to mention the recovery is different. So the grieving process of getting fired is very different than you proactively being in the driver's seat. And I'll tell you the story around the 2.3 million. The woman's husband downloaded the 7 steps of grieving, and it was over the holidays. And he sat with her and said, "Okay, honey, for the new year, before everything is fresh and new, you're finally gone. Let's go through this so that you can start the new year right." She's like, "Honey, I ain't grieving. I'm on cloud nine." So had she been fired, it would have been a very different conversation because there's ego involved and there's anger and there's all sorts of stuff. So the grieving processes are streamlined when you're in the driver's seat.
For those folks that after they have exited, whether it was the proactive or, it wasn't of their choosing, and they decide, I'm not going to go back and work for someone else. I want to make the leap to create my own business. You made that leap and you built yours at, I believe, at 51. I think regardless of age, many people have fears or hesitancies. What either mindset or fear did you have to overcome when you launched your business? And what do you see most common with people finally deciding to make that leap to go out on their own?
There were a lot of fears. I didn't know how to launch a company. It's not for the faint of heart, by the way. It is real. I'm also extremely ambitious and overachiever, and whew, it was a road to get here for sure, because my measure of success when I came in is different than my measure of success today. I think the fears were around, if I'm going to make this business happen, I have to show up online. And showing up as your authentic self on camera isn't always easy. I didn't know, never videoed myself, never spoke to my camera, was very uncomfortable in the beginning. So that was, I would say, a big fear. And plus, like putting yourself out there online for everyone to see, that was really scary. And then just like navigating the business in general, like from A to Z, every single aspect of what we had different departments to do, I am suddenly now responsible for, including accounting and taxes. And I told you earlier, no one should trust me with their money. No, just kidding. I don't like balancing my account. So I immediately hired a bookkeeper, immediately hired my accountant, like hire the people to support me was actually one of the best decisions that I made, even though I was putting money out. Um, there was a lot of fears, and I for sure got in my own way. And it wasn't until I hired myself 4 coaches for 4 different reasons, but my business coach and my regular coach really helped me to streamline and get out of my own way and figure out how I was really going to stand this business up. I think it's very difficult to do it on your own.
I appreciate you saying and hearing from somebody who advises and coaches that advisors and coaches also need advisors and coaches, and that, you know, taking that next step and that leap, the importance of building that community around you to support you in something you haven't done before. That's a good reminder.
Yeah. I mean, rather than beating your head against the wall, bring in reinforcement. It
Yeah.
was the best decision that I made hiring them. I wouldn't be standing here today if I wouldn't have. I would be still standing. I wouldn't have gotten as far as fast without them. And I also gave myself a time frame. I'm like, if this is a viable business, I need to know now or I'm going back to corporate. And I got a taste of being on my own, and there's no way I could ever go back to corporate. So
Yeah.
I'm glad it all worked out. I have launched a podcast. It's on YouTube. Our official big splash launch will be in a few months. It's called Shooting the Shit in a Skirt. And it's me and my best friend who are literally shooting the shit in a skirt. And we are taking all of our 30 plus years of wisdom in corporate and our warts and our mistakes and leadership challenges and thoughts and ideas and what it means to be an entrepreneur and a mom and married to both of us are married to foreigners and communication challenges and travel and all the things that we both love. And it's fabulous. It's so much fun. We're going to have some behind the scenes and we're going to have Substack called The Inner Skirt. And we're really, really excited about it. So that is something that we're working on that I'm very excited about.
I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh. Well, if you ever do roundtable panel discussions, you have a willing guest.
You don't have to wear a skirt either. So that's just a good FYI. But our
Yeah.
company is called Two Skirts Media. And, we're really excited because we also already got a podcast sponsor and we haven't even officially launched yet. We have 10 episodes on YouTube and we have
Yeah.
about 22 banked. We record every week an episode so that when we launch, we'll launch with a good chunk of them on all the podcast channels. But we're really excited about it because the fact that we already got a sponsor says that somebody believes in what we're
Yes.
sharing and talking about. And, of course, we believe it and we're excited about it. But when we see other people willing to invest in it, that's also really exciting. And it actually brings me back to the conversation about money because most people would not have thought of monetizing their podcast before it launched and would
Yes.
not have thought of monetizing it yet because we don't have a following. We need to have proof. That is yet
Yes.
another door opener for people to stop waiting. There is literally
Mm-hmm.
no reason to be waiting till you have more skills, waiting till you get promoted, waiting until somebody sees you. No, you have to go out there and actually get it and be seen. So I think that's another beautiful example that just ties back to the money conversation, which is my favorite conversation.
Yes. I love that. I love the challenge of limiting beliefs because I felt like this past year I had to hold back on sponsorships for my own podcast, still being in a corporate role. And, there is some truth to that and, conflict of interest disclaimers and all that. But I love that one, you have the sponsor and how many episodes you have banked. That will make
We
your
have,
life so much easier.
yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Yeah. 22 episodes. I'm doing another one tonight. You're right, because Ricky and I travel a lot and I'm not bringing this big clomper with me. My podcast, my microphone is big. And I'm, last year I was in Europe 6 weeks straight. This year I'll be in the fall for 4 weeks straight. And then we're on the road a lot. So I want to be able to have the freedom and flexibility, which are two really big values of mine and of Ricky's, that we meet on Wednesdays at 5 o'clock. And if one of us can't make it because we're traveling, well, then we're traveling and that's out. But if we still wanted to record, I have a beautiful guest, you. I could have you on, have other
Yeah.
incredible people on. I've got a list of people that would be amazing guests that I could shoot the shit with. And it doesn't always have
Yeah.
to be Ricky. So I think that's just, we're really, really psyched about it. And our original plan was to launch with 10 on all the channels, but we launch with more because all the studies say that people will listen to an episode and then they'll go back to episode 1. And that's important for our sponsors. That's important for our listeners to actually really then get embedded and
Yeah.
get to know us. And look, from episode 1 to episode 22, we've grown.
Oh,
We're
week over
sharper,
week.
right?
Yeah.
It's so fun. And you know what's neat about it is, again, like I said this in the intro, that we want people to see our warts because none of this journey for any of us has been fluffy bunnies and rainbows. And it's actually showing those warts and showing the challenges and showing all of the road bumps that is what's interesting for people because they feel then less alone. And then
Yes.
we can talk about how we recovered from those. So I think,
Yes.
for our audience to see where we were to where we have become, I absolutely love it. It doesn't have to be so curated and so perfect. It's not my style.
I don't think people want that. I don't think people want curated and perfect. That's why I started the show of the Great Life Experiment and how much I quietly heard people struggling with feeling like they were alone and not having it figured out. And, this paralysis of like, what is the right thing to do? And just wanting to have a show where people felt seen, heard, and that their lived experience mattered because a lot of, right, our listeners today are, as I call, like in their season of fullness. You're 35 to 60. And it's one of those, you look at your life and you chose all of it, but wow, it's a lot.
Mm.
And all the change that's happening at every single level can be unsettling. And what do I do with it? And who do I talk to about it? And everybody's turning more and more to AI to ask these questions because they don't feel like they're going to be judged. And how do I get the answers? But what they really want is people that have done it before and having those conversations.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting when people share, especially when you see someone on a platform, right? So I have a platform. People see me looking quite professional on that platform, which I am, but I'm also a human and I'm a mom and I'm a partner and I make mistakes and I don't always show up with my hair and makeup done. Like it's all okay. And I think that's nice too for people to see more behind the
Yeah.
scenes that and what did you say? That light, we're in a season of fullness.
Mm-hmm. Because
Interesting. So,
I choose to, rather than saying I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, it's just my life is very full. And I'm in a season of fullness because it won't always be that way. And it reminds me that when my calendar is packed between work, doing jujitsu, the kids, friends, the podcast, all the thing, it's like I'm in the season of fullness. Someday the kids will
and,
leave the house and it will shift and it will be different. And
and
yeah,
fullness actually has a beautiful connotation. So I interpret it as my heart is full. My life is full. I didn't look at it as my calendar is full. My social calendar is full. I actually interpreted it in a different way. I don't know if you saw, but as you were
yeah,
saying it, I'm like, fullness. I was just trying to actually take that in. Ricky and I did a episode about I'm so busy because it's something sometimes like a lot of people in our lives. How are you? Huh, I'm so busy. And she was doing it a lot. And I was like, sis, you got to stop like
you have to
this.
stop.
No one
Yeah.
cares. Actually, no one cares. Can we please have a podcast about this? Because it's just become this space filler
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and no one really cares. So I like how
Yeah.
you've changed your perspective on it.
Yeah.
Um, but I still think there's room to ask, okay, so what are we taking out so
Yes.
that we have room for
Yeah.
um, us and peace and whatever it is that we're looking for.
Yeah. I love that. Kale, well, I'm so grateful that you made the leap and that you were able to share with us, since you've been on both sides of the table, for those people quietly wondering and stressing with what to do next, and also the perspective of having been on the other side. So thank you for taking the time today. For everybody listening, make sure to check out KL's website down below, and we'll make sure that we promote it once her podcast is launched as well. So, KL, thank you
Thank
for
you,
joining us
Helen.
today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into this episode today. And remember, friends, there is no one right way to do this thing called life. I hope you found this conversation valuable. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you may listen. And it would mean the world to me if you went and you clicked on rate the show and left a 5-star rating to help other people find these conversations. Until then, friends, keep experimenting. Talk to you soon.